honored, and as you probably knew, there are 4 weeks until Christmas, and I'm not sure exactly how that happened. So did anyone go shopping on Black Friday?
No.
Oh. Well, I was in Charlotte with my kids, and my 18-year-old grandson and his girlfriend did, at that huge Concord Mills in Charlotte. Oh my gosh. So what did they buy? Absolutely nothing. But Michael came to a life-changing decision, which many men probably have come to. I will never go to a mall on the Friday after Thanksgiving ever again as long as I live. And then he goes, from now on I'll focus on Cyber Monday. Right? So the rush is on, and since the economy is humming this season, it's expected that lots of people will go for broke, if you'll excuse the pun, and shop till they drop. The retailers are ecstatic. Here at Unity, though, we'll be preparing for Christmas in a different way. And what a relief it is. Reflection, fellowship, music, laughter, gifts that open our hearts and raise our spirits. The first Sunday in Advent, you may recall, used to be dedicated to hope. Now I notice that that's been changed to faith. But hope and faith are two energies that are inextricably interwoven. Actually, I don't even see how there can be hope without faith. In much the same way that gratitude gives rise to appreciation, faith gives rise to hope. One is cause and the other effect. Remember that? Hope faces the future with optimism and courage and confidence. It allows us to meet each day open and receptive to our good. And hope springs up out of faith in a universe that is benevolent and unlimited. It is knowing, not just thinking, that with God all things are possible. Fully alive hope is like a siren's call to me, a call to go exploring, to risk what is for what's possible. It's no accident that the Christmas season opens with hope and faith, for a new adventure is about to begin. We are all invited, but none of us is compelled, to venture into new spiritual territory. Some find the Christmas season painful because they're confronted with what they have lost and what they believe they lack. For them, the past looms large. Others take pleasure in the lights, parties, and carols, but don't go much deeper than that. These folks might not want to RSVP yes to the Advent adventure. But I know that some of you are sensing, as I am, an inner restlessness that you may not fully understand. For some reason, you are longing for something different this Christmas. Could it be that your soul has thrown down the spiritual gauntlet and is urging you to take up the challenge of engaging Advent as a time of personal pilgrimage? If this is you, the next few weeks could be absolutely life-changing. I'm sure you all know very well the story of the prodigal son, and you know it's one of my favorites. In it, a young man goes to his father and asks to receive his inheritance right away so he can use it to go out and explore the world. Most interpretations depict this young man as audacious and foolish, for he turns his back on his loving father, and as it turns out, squanders his fortune on wine, women, and song. But as I reflect on the story this year, I don't see the prodigal son as foolish at all. I see him as young and restless. I see that he is called by some spiritual imperative to follow the call of hope and faith out into the world. You see, he has led a sheltered life, raised in wealth. He has always been secure. But this safe cocoon has begun to feel like a prison. Life is calling the young man away. His wise and loving father understands that this is an essential part of the son's growth journey, and so he gives him his inheritance, hugs him around the neck, and lets him go. Now, the father could have warned his sons of all the dangers out there, could have told him he was not ready, could have withheld the money or forbidden him to go. But tell me something. Has there ever been a time in your life when you were determined to do something rather risky? Could anyone ever have talked you out of it? Come on, tell the truth. Do you regret having taken the risk? Me either. See, the thing is, wisdom tells us that we humans are made for adventure. We are not satisfied to be observers of life. For example, we dutifully go to school and get our diplomas, but we know that this diploma does not mean that we are proficient at our line of work. We know that the real learning comes on the job, doesn't it? I love this quote by Teddy Roosevelt. You may know it from Brene Brown. It is not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, and who, if he fails, at least fails while daring greatly. His place shall never be with those timid souls who neither know victory nor defeat. Roosevelt was a man of action for sure. He was referring to physical courage. Well, spiritual courage, spiritual growth, spiritual journeying requires courage also. We start out by studying. We read and attend classes until we know our unity principles by heart. We understand the spiritual laws and how the universe works. All these things are important preparation, but none of them will necessarily bring us to the intimate connection with God. That feeling of oneness that our souls crave, that in fact we must have in order to feel fully alive. In a way, we're all prodigal children, wandering the material world, wandering the spiritual world, seeking, and sadly, often not really finding the deep heart satisfaction and peace we long for. It's disillusioning, to say the least. After all, we've done all the right things, everything we've been taught to do, and yet our hearts somehow remain a bit lonely and restless. I've seen this over and over again, and I've seen people leave church at this point. The initial high, that honeymoon phase, has worn off, and they've come to a crossroad and don't know what to do. And so they decide that unity has no more power to make them happy than any of the other spiritual paths they've tried. And they are right. If they choose to study the principles without doing the real work of truly trying to apply them to the everyday ups and downs and vicissitudes of life. This is the arena that Roosevelt was referring to, where there is trial and error, success and failure. It takes real courage to enter this arena because so much is at stake. We face the risk that we may not be up to the challenge, that we will allow fear to overcome us. We seek faith, we seek happiness and enlightenment, and for a long time, don't seem to realize that the journey and the goal are one and the same. We understand the words. There's only one presence and one power, God, absolute good. Well, how do we hold on to that idea when confronted with natural disasters and human suffering everywhere? We understand the concept. All human beings are made in God's image and therefore have a core of goodness. Really? We're inundated with evidence of man's inhumanity to man, aren't we? For God's sake, how can we believe in the goodness of people when they and we do so many destructive things? We accept the idea that there's no lack in the universe, that we create our reality by our way of thinking and feeling. What? Does this mean I caused my illness? Does this mean that I caused the lack in my life? See, this is the thing about faith. It's the opposite of materiality, which is the belief that the only thing that's real is what I can understand through my senses. We cling to the idea that power means we should be able to understand and control what happens. But hope says, wait. You will understand more deeply in time. In the meanwhile, cling to your faith in the values and principles you hold dear. And remember that faith shines brightest when circumstances look dark and confusing. Faith is bedrock. The prodigal son had faith in his father. He knew that no matter how he messed up, he would always be loved by his dad. And so he knew he could always return home. This faith is what enabled him to dream of far-off lands and eventually actually step out to experience them. Some of you have adult children who come back home to you. Their return may not have been what you expected, but was there ever a single moment when you thought about not opening the door to them? And this is an example of how great human love is. Imagine what the love of God is like. A few weeks ago, I told you about the life-changing question my mentor asked me years ago when I was struggling with so many doubts and questions. She asked, "Do you believe the universe is benevolent or don't you? Choose." So now it's your turn. Do you believe the universe is benevolent or don't you? Choose. So let's be practical about this. What difference would a yes to this question make in your life? Say you have made the choice. Does that mean that your doubts will never arise again? Sounds good, but my guess is that's not really what happens. And it's not supposed to. Because dealing with the doubts is what the journey is all about. But once that initial decision is made, deep in the heart and soul, there is only a part of us that doubts. There's another part that's rooted somewhere in the solar plexus. Different fears and emotions can swirl around in my mind and body these days, but now there is another constant voice speaking also, which says, calm down. There's so much you don't understand. Divine order is always present and active. Good will always be unfolding. Breathe. If today or someday you find yourself going through a dark night of doubt and fear and loneliness, imagine the possibility that nothing is wrong. Imagine the possibility that your soul is telling you that the status quo is no longer good enough. Life is calling you to something greater. The uncertainty of the road ahead may be scary. After all, your mind can't seem to help reminding you of all the catastrophic possibilities out there. So it really does take courage to step out. But the thing is, life's call is relentless. It will not let you go. We've got to follow if we want to feel alive. I don't know about you, but I've noticed that growth does not usually happen on the couch. Hope and faith will see us through. Again, hope speaks and says, just take one step forward today. And faith says, you are never alone, and you are right where you are meant to be. Looking back on times like this in my own life, I see something today that I didn't see then. The times when I thought my faith was weak were the times when it was strongest. Strong enough for the risks and obstacles ahead. Strong enough to keep me moving forward. Remember, faith is not an emotion. Faith is bedrock. I'd like y'all to take a look at this painting this morning. I got a rickety little stand here. It's called The Return of the Prodigal Son. The original Rembrandt hangs in the Hermitage in St. Petersburg, Russia, and it's about 6 by 8 feet in size. So this little print does not do it justice, of course, but it's what we have to work with. I'd like you to notice the difference in energy between the Father and the Son and the three figures in the shadows. It's possible to tell by their faces what they are feeling, these guys back here. They are detached bystanders, apparently unmoved by the poignant scene before them. Is it jealousy that is walling them off? Is it anger? Or is it that they just cannot really understand what they are seeing because they have lived life as observers and have not been out in the far country themselves? They are smug and certain because they have not allowed themselves to be broken open by life. The encounter between the Father and Son in this painting is the place of truth. The place where love comes alive. The Father welcomes his wandering Son home by taking him in his arms, and the Son lays his head on his Father's chest in a complete surrender of ego and in total trust. I can imagine when I look at that the Son can feel and hear his Father's heartbeat. I can imagine that his own heartbeat is becoming synchronized with his Father's. This is the relationship with God that faith offers to each of us who dare to take the journey. So again, has some challenge arisen that has you standing at the crossroads? Is there some relationship or situation in which you are being more of an observer than a participant? Where you're standing back or holding back? Is living in your head more than your heart causing you to avoid risk or challenge? And have you felt the sadness that comes of this? We think there is something we have to do about it. A new profession, some change, new relationship maybe. When the last thing we like to think about is that we're called to stop doing things to make ourselves feel better. Can you imagine yourself on your knees before your God, completely surrendered in the moment like this young man? Completely honest about your mistakes, your brokenness, and the pain you carry. Asking forgiveness, but not pleading. No, rather gently claiming forgiveness out of the certainty that there was never any judgment to begin with, that you were always loved, that you are okay just as you are. This is the adventure, the invitation of Advent, the spiritual pilgrimage that could take us from knowing about love and seeking love outside ourselves to feeling without a doubt that we are the beloved. We are the beloved. And I ask you today, are you called to accept this invitation? And I'd caution you not to answer too quickly, because this is a profound decision. I'm still in the early stages of it myself. Because you see, what I've noticed over the years is that every little step brings up resistance. It's much easier to give love than to receive it and take it in and let it heal the past, the negativity, the fear. It's relatively easy to act loving, but surrender to love? Well, this is another matter altogether. Because this journey is about letting go of control. Moment by moment, time after time, it is the journey from emotional safety to vulnerability. It is an intensely personal encounter with the question, do I believe the universe is benevolent or don't I? Saying yes means placing ourselves and our lives and all our affairs in God's hands. It means allowing the love of God to permeate our hearts and heal us of our losses and fears and disappointments. It means accepting that life is taking us exactly where we need to go, and taking our children and our friends and our world exactly where they need to go also. It means trusting that love is driving the boat, always. So that's my question. Want to join me on this new phase of the journey from head to heart? That personal pilgrimage which offers the possibility that we could become intimate with our God. That we could feel totally and completely lovable. That we could know in our gut that the power of the universe is as close to us as our own breath. We're invited to this place beyond earning anything or deserving anything or being worthy of anything, beyond any sense of reward and punishment at all. We're invited to a place of total surrender and complete trust. The thing that snags us sometimes, I think, is that we can't think our way through this journey. We have to live our way through it. In one of his books, Greg Braden talks about a visit to a Tibetan monastery, and he recalls a meeting with an ancient monk, a wise man, and he asks the man how he can tell when one of the young monks has become enlightened. And the old man says with a twinkle in his eye, it's easy. He starts to spend less time meditating and more time playing with the cat. What do you think this means? The world is seductive. Christmas time, especially, can easily draw us into the stress of constant busyness. And it's not that we need to give up doing the things we love to do, but Advent calls us to be kind to ourselves and balance all the busyness with quiet time. It calls us to reconcile with anyone we may have put out of our hearts. And it mostly calls us to come home to the Father who loves us beyond words. One last thing you need to know as you consider whether or not to accept the invitation to the Advent pilgrimage. This journey does not necessarily lead to material wealth or reward. It leads only to Christmas. And what do we find on Christmas? Just a little baby. the most vulnerable creature on the planet. Open, trusting, lovable, innocent, and more precious than anything on the earth. This baby is the truth about you and me. May this be the Christmas you take this beloved child into your own arms. God bless you.